The Shroud of Turin, a highly controversial holy relic, has caused heated debates even within the Catholic Church. Over time, it faced skepticism as a possible forgery due to carbon dating tests, pointing to an origin roughly 800 to 1,000 years after Christ's era. However, recent evidence has emerged, bringing fresh perspectives on its authenticity. Interestingly, a member of the original examining team has boldly claimed that the testing process was flawed, rendering the results unreliable. To make matters more intriguing, the raw data from these tests remained hidden from the public for a staggering 27 years. There were even rumors of financial incentives given to the laboratories involved, possibly to perpetuate the notion that the Shroud of Turin is merely a medieval fabrication. This leads us to ponder, could there be government institutions with an interest in concealing the secrets behind the Shroud of Turin? Carefully preserved since the year 1578, the Shroud of Turin found its sanctuary in the royal chapel of the Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista. Its dimensions were awe-inspiring, stretching to a length of 4.3 meters and a width of 1.1 meters. What made it truly captivating, though, were the faint brownish images that seemed to grace its surface. If one gazed upon the shroud, they would behold the ghostly impressions of a gaunt, sunken-eyed figure, a man standing at a height of 5 feet 7 inches. It was as if the shroud had borne witness to the last moments of life, with one half of the cloth showcasing the image of a body laid lengthwise, and the other half gracefully folding over to cover the entire front from face to feet. But that was not all. The images on the shroud were said to contain marks that were eerily reminiscent of the wounds endured during the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. There were thorn marks on the head, as though a crown of thorns had been painfully pressed upon it. Lacerations on the back seemed to speak of a brutal flogging, while bruises on the shoulders hinted at the weight of a heavy burden carried. The most poignant of all were the stains, believed to be blood, scattered across the shroud. These stains, it was whispered, were the sacred reminders of the ultimate sacrifice made for humanity. However, it is important to note that the Catholic Church does not take an official stance on the authenticity of the relic. The Church has refrained from asserting that it is anything beyond an icon of Christian devotion. They do acknowledge that millions of pilgrims see it as a symbol representing the mystery of the passion and death of the Lord. Since the late 19th century, scholars have delved into the shroud's mysteries, employing scientific methods in a quest to ascertain its authenticity. A remarkable observation surfaced in 1898 when experts noted that the sepia-tone images on the shroud bore an uncanny resemblance to photographic negatives rather than positive images. In 1988, the Vatican decided to address the authenticity question once and for all. They entrusted 3 laboratories in different countries with tiny samples of the shroud's linen cloth, each no bigger than a postage stamp. The purpose was to conduct carbon-14 dating on these samples and establish the shroud's age. Much to their collective astonishment, all 3 laboratories independently reached the same conclusion. The cloth had been woven between 1260 and 1390. However, here's the intriguing part. Despite the carbon dating results, scientists are unable to explain the image on the shroud. It displays a photographic negative of a body bearing wounds consistent with those that Christ would have had. While experts can confidently tell that the shroud is not from the time of Christ, they remain unable to definitively explain what it truly represents. For over a century, scientists have diligently pursued the investigation of this sacred relic, yearning for a definitive answer. Yet despite the employment of the most advanced scientific technology today, no one has managed to replicate the mysterious image it bears. Nevertheless, scientific progress has brought forth a gradual unveiling of new evidence, bolstering the case for the Shroud of Turin's authenticity. To begin, let's consider the insights of Barry Schwartz, a member of the team that conducted the initial examination of the shroud. He served as the official photographer for the Shroud of Turin research project. The primary aim of their study was to ascertain the formation process behind the image on the shroud. Being a non-practicing Jew at that time, he had reservations about joining the team and doubted the authenticity of the shroud, assuming it was merely an intricate painting. Nevertheless, during their meticulous examination of the fabric, he stumbled upon one of the enduring mysteries of the image, which continues to captivate researchers to this day. He clarified that they utilized a specialized instrument designed for X-ray evaluation, capable of stretching the lights and darks of an image vertically into space in proportion to their density. Ordinarily, this process would lead to a distorted image, but with the shroud, a natural three-dimensional relief of a human figure became apparent. This indicates a significant correlation between the image's density, its lights and darks, and the distance between the cloth and the body. He stated that the only reasonable interpretation for this phenomenon is an interaction between the cloth and the body, ruling out the possibility of it being a mere projection, as photographs or artworks do not possess the same kind of information present in the shroud. Their initial search for evidence of paint, pigments, or binders that could imply artificial creation of the image yielded no results. Instead, their thorough examination revealed that the image was composed of yellow, discolored fibers, and the darkness of specific areas was determined by the concentration of these fibers. In essence, there was no evidence of any external substance or intervention that could explain the image's formation. Despite this finding, it was the radiocarbon test conducted 10 years after their examination that ultimately led to the conclusion that the shroud was not authentic. However, Barry highlights the suspicious aspect that it took an arduous 27 years under the Freedom of Information Act to obtain the raw data from the British Museum, which supervised the 3 labs conducting the radiocarbon testing. Such a prolonged delay in releasing the data is highly uncommon in scientific practice. Normally, scientists publish their work in journals and share the raw data, allowing other researchers to validate or expand upon their findings as a standard part of the scientific method. Once the raw data was finally obtained, it shed light on the reasons for the reluctance to release it. The data showed that the sample taken from the shroud was inhomogeneous, meaning it was a strip cut from the cloth with one date at one end and another date hundreds of years later at the other end of the strip. Consequently, there was no specific point on the strip that could be definitively linked to the date of the entire cloth. Furthermore, they did not take any control samples from other areas of the shroud, which is crucial for reliable radiocarbon dating. There is evidence in the corner where the sample was taken that shows the presence of interwoven cotton. This discovery contradicts Jewish law, known as the mixing of the kinds, which prohibits combining wool with cotton or cotton with linen. A burial shroud of someone of high stature is supposed to be made of pure linen, but the finding of cotton in the corner implies that a repair or reweaving was done in that area. Consequently, the radiocarbon dating was performed on a repaired corner of the shroud, making it impossible to obtain an accurate date for any other part of the cloth. Immediately after the results were leaked, before their official publication, claiming that the shroud was medieval, suspicions arose regarding the motivations behind the research. The British Museum, particularly the Oxford Laboratory, one of the 3 labs involved in examining the shroud, received a substantial sum of £1 million from anonymous donors with the specific intention of debunking the shroud. This raises the question, could there be influential groups with vested interests in denying the authenticity of the shroud? Blood chemistry has also been employed in the search for evidence supporting the authenticity of the fabric. The blood stains found on it were of type AB, a rarity among the general population but more common among Jewish individuals. The blood exhibited an astonishingly vivid red color that defied normal aging, hinting at unimaginable suffering endured by the individuals wrapped within the shroud. The blood stains cascading down the arms provided clear evidence of a cruel crucifixion, with the angle of the blood flow perfectly matching the movements of a crucifixion victim. Surprisingly, the bloodstains predated the image on the shroud, indicating that the unique image-forming process occurred precisely 72 hours after the blood came into contact with the cloth, leading to an astonishing transformation. Upon further investigation, researchers discovered a combination of travertine aragonite and Jerusalem limestone in the dirt found on the shroud, which is the same limestone found in Jesus' tombs in Jerusalem. This finding raised intriguing possibilities. Additionally, the fabric contained 49 different types of pollen, with 33 originating exclusively from Palestine and 3 unique to Jerusalem, potentially linking it to the infamous crown of thorns. Moreover, the utilization of advanced wide-angle X-ray scattering enabled researchers to achieve more accurate and dependable dating of the fabric. Physicists examined the eyes of the man depicted on the shroud and discovered faint traces of ancient coins used in Jewish burials during the 1st century, which matched the coins employed by Pontius Pilate during that era. Furthermore, the size of the shroud is remarkably close to an ancient unit of measurement, measuring 2 by 8 cubits. Notably, a 3-inch wide side strip on the shroud was sewn with a unique stitch that was exclusively used in Palestine during the 1st century, forging a strong connection to the past. Throughout centuries, artistic depictions of the crucifixion typically showed nails being driven through the palms. However, archaeological revelations have emerged, indicating that the nails were actually driven through the wrists, aligning with what is depicted on the shroud. The punctures around the head also perfectly match the shape of thorns, remarkably in line with the biblical narrative of the crown of thorns. Abrasions on the shoulders suggest the burden of carrying a heavy, rough object, possibly across blood-soaked soil, indicating moments of stumbling and falling. Wounds on the nose, potentially resulting from a fall or a beating, add another layer of authenticity to the shroud's narrative. Not to be overlooked, the side wound bears a striking resemblance to a 2-inch wide elliptical wound, reminiscent of a Roman spear. The reverse image on the shroud reveals a remarkable separation of blood and clear blood serum, mirroring the phenomenon witnessed when a person dies from a wound. This eerie resemblance to the biblical accounts, as described in John's Gospel, adds to the enigmatic allure of the shroud. All these astounding details come together to portray a single man and an extraordinary historical tale, the story of Jesus Christ. Hidden within the fabric, researchers have also uncovered remarkable discoveries, inscriptions that defy explanation. 3 distinct lines below and beside the chin reveal clear and precise writings. How did they decipher these markings? By carefully dividing the shroud's official photographs into countless squares and using advanced visualization techniques to analyze their optical characteristics. Barbara Frail, a researcher from the Vatican, employed computer-enhanced images of the shroud to decipher faintly written words in Greek, Latin, and Aramaic scattered across the cloth. According to her findings, the words include the name Jesus of Nazareth in Greek. She asserts that this finding dismisses the possibility of the text being of medieval origin because no Christian at that time, even a forger, would have mentioned Jesus without acknowledging his divinity. To do otherwise would risk being branded a heretic. In addition, she extracted the words from enhanced photos of the shroud and presented them to experts, who agreed that the writing style was typical of the Middle East in the 1st century, which corresponds to the time of Jesus. And so, the question emerges. How did the image appear on the fabric in the first place? Countless theories have been put forth in an attempt to unravel the mystery behind its formation. In 2002, Raymond Rogers from the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, a prominent figure in scientific testing of the shroud, argued that a simple chemical transformation could account for the image. He proposed that even moderate heat, perhaps around 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature that a dead body could briefly attain if it experienced hyperthermia or dehydration, might be enough to discolor the sugary carbohydrate compounds on the surface of cotton fibers. Rogers insisted that it doesn't require a miracle. While this idea is reassuringly mundane, there is little evidence supporting it in this specific context. After all, it's not a common occurrence being observed on funeral shrouds. Another theory posits that the discoloration of the fibers resulted from a chemical reaction with a substance emitted from the body. In the early 1900s, French biologist Paul Vignon proposed that this substance might have been ammonia, generated from the breakdown of urea in sweat. However, this explanation falls short, as the image produced would be too blurry. In 1982, biophysicist John DeSalvo suggested an alternative. The substance could be lactic acid from sweat. This compound is known for producing dark, negative images like the Volkringer images of plant leaves that are left between the pages of a book for an extended period, where substances exuded from the leaf react with paper fibers. However, one particular explanation stands out. A researcher named John Jackson concluded that vacuum UV radiation remains the sole plausible explanation for the formation of the image. To transform linen into a perfectly photographically sensitive material, light radiation is required, but it must be devoid of any accompanying heat radiation. To produce the image on the shroud, an astounding amount of approximately several billion watts of light radiation would be required, surpassing anything known from UV radiation sources today. If the accompanying heat energy were present, the cloth would have vaporized in an unimaginably brief span, less than 1/40 of a second. Such a process would demand a magnitude of power greater than the total electrical energy generated by our entire planet combined. It becomes evident that only a miracle from the Almighty God could account for such a phenomenon. The Shroud of Turin, to some, may be dismissed as a fake, but for millions of devoted believers, it stands as an unparalleled symbol of the profound sacrifice made by Jesus to redeem humanity. It transcends mere fabric and becomes a timeless testament of faith, inspiring hearts and souls throughout the ages. What are your thoughts about this? I hope you like our story. Until the next one.